Okay.
Thank you. Welcome to our Sunday morning service at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown, this rainy and foggy August 1st, 2021. It is good to get together, whether in person or online. Thank you for being here. We welcome all without consideration of income, race, whom you love, how poor or rich you are, whatever your religion or philosophy is at the moment. The journey is for everyone, and it is enlightening to think about it together. Please, everybody, feel at home. I have a couple of announcements, and those are from the Sojourner. Just a reminder, the next Sunday, August 8th, is our Reverend Dave Hunter, who will be talking about the dignity and worth of every person, our impossible belief. In the first of our 7 UU principles, we affirm, he says, the dignity and worth of every person. Do we really mean it? How many people can you think of in the next minute who appear to lack dignity and worth? From Reverend Dave. Reminder from the President's message, there's a lot of work to be done in preparation for September the 12th. And if you, I think all of you volunteer, but if you know people who haven't volunteered, suggest it to them. And folks who are interested in UU action now for prison reform, especially concerning solitary confinement or redistricting, please be in touch with Patricia Rooney. Okay, we're going to light the chalice. Emily will light the chalice, and I'm going to read some words from Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think it works.
Oh, am I supposed to light the chalice? Ah,
no. We have a makeshift chalice today.
Things going on.
No, she's going to get the real one. Okay, we're going to have the real thing.
Okay. I didn't do my setup. I didn't know if I had the chalice since nobody knew I was going to be here. So here we.
Okay, if you're ready, I'll read some words from Ralph Waldo Emerson. The poem is "We Sing of Golden Mornings." It's been set to music in our UU hymnal, but I chose to do only the poetry for today because he inspired so many conservationists and environmentalists. He says, "We sing of golden mornings. We sing of sparkling seas, of prairies, valleys, mountains, and stately forest trees. We sing of flashing sunshine and life-bestowing rain, of birds among the branches when springtime comes again. We sing the heart courageous, the youthful eager minds. We sing of hopes undaunted, of friendly ways and kind. We sing the roses waiting beneath the deep piled snows. We sing the earth's great splendor, whose beauty round us grows." Thank you.
Oops.
Okay, I've asked Linda to tell us something important and sad. And Linda, if you would please share with us.
Hi. As most of you know, Peggy Jones passed away July 28th. And she was a member of UUFP since the beginning, even when UUFP was an idea. She was our last founding member. She was married to Bob Jones, who was instrumental in the formation of UUFP. Peggy served several roles at UUFP. She was an office worker in the early days. She was on the aesthetics committee for many years, and she maintained our history cabinet that's in the foyer of our building until we closed the building at the start of the pandemic. Peggy was a quiet woman who attended just about every service put on by UUFP. She once said to me that UUFP was Bob's dream and his passion, and she was determined to support it even after Bob passed away in 2008. I spoke with Peggy at the end of June and had no inkling that she was seriously ill. She was happy and sounded just like Peggy, not giving any idea that she was ill, if in fact she was. I do not know if she suffered or passed away quietly in her sleep. I can only hope She went quietly into that good night, doing just the opposite of Dylan Thomas's poem, Do Not Go Quietly Into the Night. Peggy said she had a good life and mentioned it several times over the past years. She told me that during the pandemic, she loved looking out her windows into the backyard. It brought back memories of her immediate family, and that always brought her joy. Since Peggy was directly involved in the founding of UUFP, I'd like to mention a little bit about UUFP's beginnings. The idea of UUFP started in 1966 when Bob Jones and two friends met to discuss liberal religion, and one of the friends introduced Bob to UUism. In June of '67, they organized a meeting to see if people in the Pottstown area were interested in getting together to discuss Unitarian Universalism. 10 people showed up for that meeting. UUFP was chartered by the UUA on November 10th, 1967 with 23 members. Meetings were held in various people's houses, the old Cedarville Grange building on the grounds of the Cedarville Methodist Church, and for several years at John and Gladys Smith's Anvil Art Studio in the Pottstown area. The land which houses our present fellowship was given to us by member Ted Serlet. Plans were made to construct UUFP by Bob, and with the help of other UUFP members, UUFP was built. Members started to meet in our current fellowship building in 1984, which consisted of the front half of the building. At that time, it had kerosene heaters, cement floor, and electric hanging lights. In the late 1990s, an addition was added, that is our religious education wing and social hall. And in November 2017, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. When you add it up, Peggy was a member of UUFP for all of its 54 years. That's amazing dedication to the idea of supporting a liberal faith in a conservative community. Next Sunday, I'll bring a card for everyone to sign and we'll send it to Peggy's family. I'm sure you'll miss Peggy as I will, but at least we had the pleasure of knowing her for many years. Thank you.
Thank you for that eloquent tribute to Peggy. Very, very nice. We all appreciate that. I hope you have a document of it somewhere. So good. I'm dedicating the program to Peggy because she conserved the fellowship for us. And I don't know if we have Carly online or not. It doesn't look that way.
Yep.
Right. I'd like to read the words of a hymn that I had asked Carly to play. If she comes on later, I'll still ask her to do it.
Carly, she's here.
She's here.
She's here. All right, Carly, I'm going to read the words for all creatures of the earth and sky and then ask you to play it twice. The words are attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, who I consider one of the early conservationists in history. And the words are these, and a lot of folks in Protestant and Catholic backgrounds know the tune for this as All Creatures, Great and Small. All creatures of the earth and sky, come kindred, lift your voices high. Bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Swift rushing wind, so wild and strong, white clouds that sail in heaven along. Fair rising morn, in praise rejoice. High stars of evening, find a voice. Cool flowing water, pure and clear, make music for all life to hear. Dance, flame of fire, so strong and bright, and bless us with your warmth and light. I omitted the alleluias because they sound an awful lot better with the played music. Carly, if you would be kind enough to play All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. Carly. It's an old German tune. It's cute. Used called Lass uns erfreuen, and it means let us rejoice. And the arrangement you listened to was put together by Ralph Vaughan Williams and has been known as the best tune for that and several other hymns as well. This brings us to some environmental statements as to how, why, when did any of us become aware of the importance of conservation, environmentalism, ecology, whichever you choose to call it. The first statement is from Linda Kozitsky. She sent it to me because she's away. And Linda says, I don't believe I became aware of the word conservation until I was well into my teens. However, my earliest memories do include my father constantly telling us that, quote, we do not waste, fill in the blank, unquote. Before I go on, you need to understand a bit about my father. He was born in 1923, the fourth of 8 children to Polish immigrants. He grew up on a 14-acre farm in Hatfield, PA. The primary purpose of the farm was to feed the family and offer things to trade with other farmers. Grandpa raised chickens, the farm next door raised pigs, and so everybody got eggs and bacon for breakfast if you worked together. But he did know of food scarcity growing up. You need to know that the farm did not have indoor plumbing until the mid-40s and that he joined the Navy during the war. So he had a very healthy respect for the limited nature of water. So how did his parenting style of we must not waste show up in my childhood? Well, first, we do not waste water. In my house, you did not just turn on the shower, wash your hair, condition your hair, wash your body, shave your legs, and then turn off the water. My father installed a fitting in the shower head where you could turn the water off right there and it would maintain its temperature. And so showers went like this. Turn on the faucets, get your temperature, wet your body, turn it off, and shower your head. Shampoo your hair without water on, and then turn the water on to rinse it. Put conditioner on your hair with the water off, then turn the water back on to rinse it. I think you got the picture that the only activity to be done with water was rinsing. All other activity was to be done with water off. And I continued to do this through college and early adulthood. My husband even asked me what I was doing with the water in the shower. Other ways we didn't waste water was to put bricks in the toilet tank. And my comment, I've heard of other people who did this. She says, by doing that, the tank required less water to fill because of the displacement caused by the bricks. My father even had it figured out that he could use 1.5 bricks and there would still be enough water to flush. I'll never forget being at a friend's house when they were fixing the toilet and I saw no bricks in it. We also kept brown water on the kitchen counter if you did not drink all the liquid of any sort in your cup or glass, except for milk. You poured that into the brown water jug. It was then used to water plants. While I do not put bricks in the toilet tank, I still have a brown water pitcher that I use to water my plants. She continues, the other big item of do not waste was food. With 4 growing kids, leftovers were a rarity. And when we did have some, you didn't throw them out. My father's philosophy was that any leftover could be used in 1 or 2 ways, either fry it with an egg. My grandmother must have been listening to that, or have it for breakfast. Imagine my surprise when I found that hash browns were not fried leftover mashed potatoes or put in a pot to make soup out of. Another lesson was that it was okay to pick up meat with bones and eat it with your fingers because that way you cleaned the bone a lot closer. So chicken, pork chops, ribs were all fair game. And I was always amazed when I thought that I had really cleaned the meat off my bones. My father could take it and get even more. Needless to say, I do not order meat on a bone when I'm in public. And yes, you had to eat everything. She points out that the word scrapple comes from scraps. And she said I could go on with more stories. But I'll close by saying that the circumstances with which my father grew up gave him a respect for the fact that food and water are limited resources. And when we look around the world now and see the problems with water, drought, all kinds of people being food insecure, we know what she's talking about. Randy, would you like to talk about Kathleen Shea Anderson and the birds? Randy.
I was just rehearsing there. It's Kathleen Shaw Anderson, Betty to most people. She was born in 1923 also, like Linda's father, and also my mother. So all kinds of inspiring people were apparently born that year. And Kathleen, or Betty, lived a huge life. What an amazing piece of luck for me to have had her in mind. I've borrowed from a tribute written and posted on the Massachusetts Audubon Society's blog site by their Director of Important Bird Areas, Wayne Peterson. Her contributions to environmental science, he said, are innumerable and mind-boggling, but if you knew Betty, not surprising. To clarify, I just want to clarify that Mass Audubon is not affiliated with the National Audubon Society and is a force of nature in environmental research. So Wayne Peterson wrote about Betty. She spent most of her adult life living in Carver and East Middleborough, Massachusetts. That's my hometown. In the 65 years she lived at Wolf Trap Hill Farm in Middleborough, Betty kept track of every living critter that she could identify, not just birds, but also mammals, amphibians, reptiles, insects, and plants. Her love and stewardship of the natural world radiated outward from the farm to the rest of Massachusetts as she taught and advocated on behalf of the environment, inspiring people in all of her endeavors. He continues, Betty claimed that her 60 years as a Mass Audubon member offered a continuous learning and enriching experience, along with ongoing opportunities to contribute to various projects where she always felt she learned more than she produced. Peterson says, here I have to disagree. There are legions of professional ornithologists and conservationists throughout the country who learned from what she produced, which will long withstand the test of time. What Betty Anderson produced throughout her life is truly remarkable. Now, what follows is Peterson's enumeration of some of Betty's accomplishments. But before I read it, I want to tell you that Betty had a high school diploma. I remember when she thought she'd better get a degree or something. I saw her putting together a term paper for a college history course. She had papers scattered all over the living room. Excuse me. And open books on every surface. She wasn't feeling productive. She gave up the idea of college pretty quickly and instead spent her time doing what she felt called to do. So put on your seatbelts and keep in mind her high school diploma. And while I share some of the things she did, I'm going to try to share a screen right now. This will be a miracle if I succeed. Share. And then how do I go somewhere? Share. Exit full screen. No, that doesn't do it. Okay, I'll have to figure out how to do that someday. Sorry, I can't share my screen. Sorry to disappoint. I'll get back to full screen here. Oh, now it's brought me there. Maybe I can. Can you see that?
No, we can't.
No?
No.
As one who has failed many times, but finally got this, click the green share screen. It's going to open a screen with a whole bunch of stuff. Click the screen you want to share, and then at the bottom of that same thing that has all the options, click share.
Oh.
Here we go.
What are you seeing?
Zoomatopia registration is live. So just go back in and click what you want to share.
Oh, I just had to move something over.
There,
There. Do
there
see?
you go.
Okay. This is Betty. I'm going to give you this one. Now, I have people's faces in front of the picture of her. I hope that you can see her. She's holding a merlin, which is a little bit bigger than a kestrel or sparrowhawk, people used to call them.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'll just leave that on. You can watch that for a while. And get your seat belts on, because here it comes. After all of that, I lost my place. Here we are. So Peterson goes on. Always curious and ever intrepid, Betty began her professional ornithological career working with the Mass Department of Public Health, where she was employed trapping, banding, and taking blood samples from birds in Cedar Swamp, Eastern equine encephalitis research. When her children were young, Betty became a Mass Audubon teacher, where she weekly introduced children to birds and natural history in school systems in southeastern Massachusetts. By the 1960s, let's pop this next one on. By the 1960s, Betty's enthusiasm for research and bird banding led her to establish a bird banding station on Duxbury Beach. Betty's active involvement with this cooperative banding project ultimately led to the establishment of the Manomet Bird Observatory, now called Manomet Inc. And by the way, Manomet has grown from a single entity to a global organization of 26 stations in North and South America alone, studying climate change, flyways, resilient habitats, and providing education and outreach. Can you see the energy in that face? And that face was for everyone. I don't remember ever seeing her not give people her entire attention, and always encouraging and kind. So Peterson goes on. As Betty's reputation and expertise in conservation-related activities broadened, her influence and experience grew. In 1973, she became a founding trustee of the Plymouth County Wildlands Trust, now the Wildlands Trust. From 1981 to 2018, she began a continuous run as a member and eventually chair of the Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Programs Advisory Committee. Betty received the prestigious Governor Francis W. Sargent Award from the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife in 2007. While her many honors and tributes are legend, several of the most notable are receiving the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's Arthur A. Allen Award in 1984. Betty was the first person without a PhD ever to win this prize. I bet she's the only one with just a high school diploma too. Being elected a fellow of the American Ornithologist Union in 2005. And her service on the boards of Mass Audubon, Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, New England Wildflower Society, and Northern American Loon Fund, and the American Birding Association. In the last paragraph of Peterson's tribute to Betty, he says, throughout her career, Betty authored and published more than 50 professional papers and numerous popular articles in journals and magazines. However, her personal journals documenting, which I saw her doing every day in her little office, documenting and detailing indications of climate change as a result of 50 years of continuous observation of events on Wolf Trap Hill Farm, may be among her most valuable professional contributions. I spent much of my childhood with Betty and her family at Wolf Trap Hill, which was a neighboring farm to my family's farm. Her effect on me was one of nurturer, of caring, spirit, and mind. She opened her library to me. She shared her days in the field with me, trapping and banding birds. At the age of about 10, I was her assistant when she lectured at conservation organizations in Southeastern Mass and even in Boston once. She seemed always to have time for me. I ate at her table. Sometimes I think more than I ate at my own family's table. I swung from treetop to treetop on Wolf Trap Hill. It was a safe haven for me. I learned how to be present, walking with what was around me. She woke me up to much of my life and showed me possibilities where there appeared to be none. I am still stunned by her passing in 2018, but dealing with loss is a part of life, she would say to me. It's character building. Peterson concluded about Betty. The beacon that was Betty's life was a brilliant beam that shaped life, lives, and careers. May her rich legacy live on forever, and the lessons that she taught me always remain a beacon for others to follow. She's like a chalice. Well said, Wayne Peterson. Kathleen Shaw Anderson, Betty. How could I help but be inspired? There's a postscript to this. Lots of people during her life, contractors and developers and others, wanted Wolf Trap Hill, the 100 acres to Wolf Trap Hill farm. There's a lot of competition for that. And while I visited her last, shortly before her death, a contractor dropped by to pressure her into selling her property. I couldn't believe he did that. She smiled and said only, I have plans for this land. She kept her plans close to the vest. Betty's mother was a full-blooded Native American. I don't know the particulars, but I know that Wolf Trap Hill is now an organic farm worked and I suspect managed by the native Wampanoag people, not a casino, and probably part of the Native Land Trust. So that's Betty. I could talk about her for hours. I have so many stories. She had something she used to say to people, encouraging them to come and stay with her anytime they needed a place to stay or to visit. She would say, the string is on the latch. She had rigged a string over the door so that if you were outside and knew what the string meant, you could pull the string, it would lift the latch on the inside of the door and you could come in anytime. So anyway, that was Betty. And still part of my life. Here's another picture. And I will just finish by saying that I've read yesterday, I think, that the Pennsylvania Game Commission has reported that the bird virus that has been going around has apparently, I don't know how to say it. It's not as evident. They're not finding as many, anywhere near as much evidence that it's around this week. So that's good news. And they encourage you not to feed the birds, but if you do feed the birds, they encourage you to use feeder cleaning methods where you clean it with bleach. And rinse it, of course, and then hang it back up and feed, but they're still not recommending it. And that's my person.
Thank you so much, Randy. It was great to get to know her through you.
Lovely person.
She certainly sounds like a person who had a seat at the kitchen table for everybody.
Yes.
As one of the Native American storytellers says.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much. John and Kay Price, can you hear me? Can we get back to them?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
All right. Would either of you or both like to say something about Canyon de Chelly on your trips out west?
Actually, I have a whole other thing about the book that I was reading when you called me.
Okay.
I have a lot of stuff, but I'm going to try to cut it back.
All right.
When
You want to do this? Share screen?
no, I don't. I'm just going to hold this up.
Randy, would you like
Are
me
we
to
good?
stop your sharing?
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
I was reading this book when you called me. It's called Nature's Best Hope. And it is a new approach to conservation that starts in your yard. And I like this book a lot because it gives you practical ways to conserve nature in your yard just by doing simple things and using native plants. So the author is Douglas Tallamy. He is a professor at of entomology and wildlife ecology at University of Delaware. And many of the statistics within the book are from direct scientific research by his students and himself. So it's pretty cool, all the measurings of caterpillars from this tree or that plant. So it's pretty fascinating. So many species of insects and birds are diminished or disappearing altogether. And when you ask why, usually the answer is loss of habitat. But what does that actually mean? And what can we do as individuals? So in this book, the author encourages us to help create what he calls homegrown national parks. So instead of having a national park in your own yard, you're going to encourage nature and insects thriving on native plants. So first of all, the good news is that we can help save the insects, the birds, and nature itself, but we have to change the way that we landscape. In the past, conservationists worked exclusively where people were not. We now need to save nature where people are. So living with nature is an option, and we now need to find ways for nature to thrive in human-dominated landscapes. We need to renew all parts of nature, but for now, let's focus on its most important species, the species that contribute the most to how the ecosystem functions. To sustain flowering plants, we need bees. Bees are the most successful pollinators in the insect world. We rely on bees to pollinate at least 1/3 of our crops, 87% of all plants, and 90% of flowering plants. To sustain food webs, we need caterpillars. Caterpillars transfer more energy from plants to other animals than any other plant eaters. Caterpillars dominate nestling sites of birds in 16 out of 20 bird families. Why caterpillars? Because caterpillars are soft. You can feed them to the young without hurting their little necks, their throats. They're full of protein and fats, and they're very high in carotenoids. Carotenoids are essential components of a healthy diet. Humans get beta carotene from carrots, lycopene from tomatoes, and lutein from kale. We all need carotenoids, yet none of us can make our own. Humans can eat the plants, but birds must eat the insects that eat the plants. So caterpillars are full of carotenoids. For most birds, caterpillars are not optional. Caterpillars are so important to breeding birds that many species may not be able to breed at all in habitats that do not contain enough caterpillars. The eastern bluebird relies more on caterpillars than any other food source to feed their young. How many caterpillars does it take to feed a nest of chickadees? To rear one clutch, they must catch at least 6,240 to 9,120 caterpillars. So that's until they fledge, the birds fledge. When insects decline, birds decline. How do we as individuals landscape for caterpillars? We add caterpillars to landscapes by adding the plants that feed them. What plants feed caterpillars the most? Native plants. Most caterpillars are host plant specialists, so we have to add the plants on which caterpillars have specialized. And I think most people know that monarchs specialize on milkweed. And just a little side, when we're doing our house construction out back, And we did have a bank that had milkweed on it, but since they disturbed the whole bank there, it just came up full of milkweed, and it is just so great. We're starting to give some of them away for other people to plant. And they have a very interesting plant root structure. It's just like it isn't even roots that go out like this. They just stick down in like a stick. So I hope the people that we've given a couple to, that they're thriving, that they're living. So there are 4 keys to success for this homegrown national park that he is trying to establish in the US. First, we have to shrink our lawns. Lawns don't do much for caterpillars and insects. And we have to replant the areas with native plants. So that means like maybe half of your lawn that is abutting where trees are, let it go wild and plant native plants there. Keystone plants are essential, meaning a few native plants are much better at supporting food webs than other. Just 5% of our native plants make up 75% of the caterpillar food that drives food webs. The question is no longer simply whether natives are better than non-natives, but rather which native species will support the most pollinators and caterpillars. Now, I printed up something, and I can send this to people. It is just in our area, native plants and trees. And you can also go to a few websites, which I have on this I was going to hand it out if we were in person today. The National Wildlife Foundation has a really good website, and so does the Audubon Society. So I can send this to anybody that wants this information. It's pretty quick and dirty. I mean, one thing that he said was the white oak is probably the best tree for insects and caterpillars and birds because it feeds and it helps to keep the ecosystem going in a very natural way. Let's see here. There are 480 species of butterflies and moths that pupate in the soil or in cocoons in the leaf litter. And when I think of leaf litter, I think of all the leaf litter between all the pin oaks that we have at the fellowship. They've got to be pupating a lot of butterflies and moths there because we do not rake there anymore. So we're actually doing good by not doing that. So when you're planning your backyard homegrown national park, remember that caterpillars need a safe place to pupate before they emerge as moths and butterflies. So when the caterpillar is finished eating a plant, it either drops off into the ground or it crawls to another plant before molting and becoming a pupa. So planting native species around tree trunks for the caterpillars where they drop down. If you plant something like native pachysandra or wild ginger, it allows the pupa to develop safely. Whereas if you mow right up to the trunks of trees, you're eliminating how they're trying to develop into a butterfly or a moth. So if you plant even native ferns or anything where they can drop down safely that's undisturbed, then you're helping butterflies and moths to complete their cycles. There's still room for compromise. It's not the presence of non-native plants that destroy the food webs. It's the absence of native plants. In speaking about the early years of conservation, he talks about how 3 missteps were made. First of all, we think that nature is optional. It was thought that it's optional. You can contain it in a park, etc. We have assumed that humans and nature cannot coexist. By restricting conservation efforts to untouched areas, we have condemned them to ultimate failure because such areas are too small and too isolated from each other. All places have ecological significance, even your yard. We must connect isolated habitat fragments by being better conservation stewards on all the land in between. And when I think of this, he has a little chart that talks about all these places where like airports, golf courses, roadsides, power lines, railroad right-of-ways that could have native plants that could flourish. So that would continue, and they're looking for food and host plants where they could breed and develop. The third misstep was to leave earth stewardship to a few specialists, not seeing it as an inherent responsibility to every human being. You don't have to save biodiversity for a living, but you can save it where you live. This approach empowers each one of us. It also shrinks the problem to some manageable size for each of us. Not only can we help natural systems to thrive in our own yards, but the untapped opportunities in other areas would greatly increase the feeding and housing of insects and birds. And I think it would be nice to perhaps join a group that also promote it. I mean, we have a metering station right next to us, and we have a cell phone tower. There could be native plants and trees in those areas instead of just mowing them. So I was thinking it would be nice if you could have a group that could put pressure and try to ask these organizations to help plant them with native. After reading this book, I began to think of all these areas that could benefit from native plants. So there are 10 steps that he encourages people to do to create this homegrown national park. First, shrink your lawn. And if you are, say you're part of a homeowners association and they're like, no, we're not going to have that. You can make a very attractive lawn that is abutted by natural plants. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of all of your lawn. Remove invasive species. Plant keystone native plants, trees such as native oaks, cherry, willow, birch, and elm, and native plants such as goldenrod, asters, and sunflowers. 4, be generous with plantings. 5, plant for specialist pollinators. 6, network with neighbors. And 7, follow the basic conservation rules on your property. That is not using insects and fertilizers, and use motion sensors instead of outdoor lighting. Don't have a light on outside all night because you are discouraging moths to going to the plants where they need to feed. Instead, they'll go to the light and just about knock themselves out trying to get to the light. So turn off your lights outside and just use motion sensors. Create caterpillar pupation sites under your trees and educate your neighborhood civic or association. And I encourage anyone who wants to aid in saving more of nature's flora and fauna to follow some of these suggestions or to read Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Ptolemy. It's an easy read with lots of good information that will help you be a part of the homegrown national park. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. That was delightful. I learned so much from listening to that. So I will do everything I can to keep caterpillars going.
The thing I love is that it is practical information.
Just wonderful. Okay.
Thank you.
Kay, can you repeat the title of that book?
Yes, it's Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Ptolemy. It's such an easy read.
I love the picture of the bluebird on the front.
Yeah, the bluebird eating a caterpillar.
Yeah.
Or
Okay,
getting,
right.
It's, you know,
we need one.
we have such a perfect situation at 1565 South Kime Street.
Yes, we do. Yes, I mean,
I think we could have our own little national park right there.
yes,
So
we
let's
do.
look into
A
that.
lot of those acreages are untouched almost, right, Alan?
Okay. I have 2 more
Yeah.
people I want to ask.
Okay.
I hate to interrupt. See, John Dreesen, are you still there? Can you hear us?
I'll leave
I
him.
don't
Here we
hear.
go. All right,
Hi.
I'm back.
Hi,
Hi,
John.
John, did you have anything that you wanted to throw in as far as awareness of conservation and when it struck you that it might be important?
Well, I'll use 2 personal experiences to be kind of more functional, I guess, than anything else. So I've had two experiences in my life where I had an event out of doors where I really felt it was an out of body experience with a message from some higher power. Once I was in college, this was up in New Hampshire, and I was running and after sundown, and I came to a promontory in my run looking over the Connecticut River, and it was a beautiful sight, almost no light, but just the moon. But it gave me the sense that I was just not alone, and that the beauty of that natural environment really spoke to me at that point. It left an indelible mark on me. The second time I was walking down a certain road or walkway I've been on before, and there was a little copse of trees, conifers, and there was a little entry point in a sense where I could walk in amongst them. And I would always find that to be the sensation, once again, that I was not alone, that's amongst these trees. I know that Emily had given a sermon in the past about communication between trees to each other, but I really felt that somehow I was being embraced by these trees. And again, once again, a sign that we are not divorced from our natural environment, that, I don't get that type of feeling amongst being in a city or being amongst a lot of buildings. Those experiences have only happened in a natural environment. And, again, speak to me about the power of that environment to enhance our spirituality, to enhance our love of the nature that surrounds us. And really, that's all I have, is that I've had these experiences that speak to me about the value of the natural environment. I've always said that the place where I feel most serene is outdoors, in the woods, in a hike, Blue Marsh Lake, French Creek State Park, the various walks we've taken in the fellowship. I mean, that's where I feel at home. I'm probably in the wrong place in my lifetime, but that's when I really feel best connected. And I also feel the highest degree of peace. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, John. That's beautiful, beautiful. And your feelings seem to agree with a lot of people who are highly involved in conservation. And it's something within that calls to what is without, I believe. Thank you. Alan Calais, I'm going to ask you to wrap up with anything you want to tell us about Aldo Leopold. Do both of your readings, and then we'll extinguish the chalice. Take your time. Our connection is indefinite. There is no rush to get off at a certain time. So, Alan, I'm leaving it all to you.
Okay, those were very interesting comments. Kay, that's an interesting perspective on nature. I think we could implement some of those things. I prepared to talk about Aldo Leopold in a variety of ways. I'm trying to decide. I think what I'll do is, I think I'll go through what I planned in the beginning. That is to talk about a little bit about Aldo Leopold's life and read a little bit from his book, Stand County. Aldo Leopold was born in 1887 and educated at the Yale School of Forestry. He began his career with the U.S. Forest Service and then joined the faculty of the University of Wisconsin. In the course of his career, he made fundamental scientific contributions to the fields of ecology and wildlife management. In addition, he was influential in the development of modern environmental ethics and played a major role in the movement for wilderness conservation. He is most widely known for a book he wrote called The Sand County Almanac. The book is a combination of natural history, scenic paintings with words and philosophy. It is considered among the most significant environmental books of the 20th century and had a substantial effect on my feelings about nature. I think what I'm going to read is part of an essay from his book, which could give you an idea of how he wrote. He wrote very beautifully, and I think it's worth hearing his words. The essay I'm going to read is about an area called the Sand Counties. And it's from a book called the Sand County Almanac. And the Sand Counties are a sparsely populated area within the Wisconsin farm country that has poor sandy soils. And he writes the following. Every profession keeps a small herd of critical terms and needs a pasture where they can run at large. Thus, economists must find free range somewhere for their pet aspersions, such as submarginality, regression, and institutional rigidity. Within the ample reaches of the Sand Counties, these economic terms of reproach find beneficial exercise, free pasturage, and immunity from the gadfly's critical rebuttal. Soil experts, likewise, would find a hard life without the Sand Counties. Where else would their podzils and gales and anaerobics find a living? In short, the Sand Counties are poor. Yet in the 1930s, when government officials exhorted the sand farmers to resettle elsewhere, these benighted folks did not want to go, even when they were baited with 3% at the federal land bank. I began to wonder why, and finally, to settle the question, I bought myself a sand farm. Sometimes in June, when I see unearned dividends of dew hung on every lupine, I have doubts about the real poverty of the sands. On solvent farmlands, lupines do not even grow, much less collect the daily rainbow of jewels. If they did, the weed control officer, who seldom sees a dewy dawn, would doubtless insist they be cut. Do economists know about lupines? Perhaps the farmers did not want to move out of the Sand Counties, who did not want to move out of the Sand Counties, had a deep reason rooted back in history for preferring to stay. I am reminded that this every April when the pasque flowers bloom on every gravelly ridge. Pasques do not say much, but I infer from their preference that their preference harkens back to the glacier that put the gravel there. Only gravel ridges are poor enough to offer pasques full elbow room in April sun. They endure snows, sleets, and bitter winds for the privilege of blooming alone. There are other plants who seem to ask for this world not riches but room. Such is the little sandwort that throws a white lace cap over the poorest hilltops just before the lupines splash them with blue. Sandworts simply refuse to live on a good farm, even a very good farm, complete with rock garden and begonias. And then there is little linaria, so small, so slender, so blue, that you don't even see it until it is directly underfoot. Finally, there is Drabia, besides whom even linaria is tall and ample. I never met an economist who knows Drabia. There are birds that are found only in the Sand Counties for reasons sometimes easy, sometimes difficult to guess. The clay-colored sparrow is there for the clear reason that he is enamored of jack pines and jack pines of sand. The sandhill crane is there for reasons that he is enamored of solitude and there is none left elsewhere. But why do woodcocks prefer to nest in the sandy regions? Their preference is rooted in no such mundane matter as food, for earthworms are far more abundant on better soils. After years of study, I now think I know the reason. The male woodcock, while doing his preening prologue to a sky dance, is like a short lady on high heels. He does not show up to advantage in dense tangled cover. But on the poorest sand street of the poorest pasture or meadow of the Sand Counties, there is in April at least no ground cover at all, save only moss, drabia, canomine, sheep sorrel, and ampanaria, all negligible impediments to a bird with short legs. Here the male woodcock can puff and strut and mince not only without without or let hindrance, but in full view of his audience, real or hoped for. This little circumstance, important for only an hour a day, for only 1 month a year, perhaps for only one of the two sexes, and certainly wholly irrelevant to economic standards of living, determine the woodcock's choice of home. That essay was meaningful to me because it showed me that sometimes there's beautiful things to be found in places that are traditionally mundane. Okay, I'll pass it back to Lisa.
Hey, Alan, was there anything else that you wanted to say about Aldo?
No, I shortened it.
Okay.
I decided to read that essay. I was going to read it at the end and say
Okay,
a little
that's
more detail, but we were running out of time, so I just
All
read
right.
that essay.
This has been a wonderful discussion. And as I said at the beginning in the welcome, for me, it is always enlightening to think about these things together. And we certainly have gotten to know each other's experiences, wishes, desires about nature in the morning. There's enough material for Conservation 3 sometime in the fall, and I will save that for then. Gonna wrap up with extinguishing the chalice. Mary, if you would be kind to do that. Please say this with me, everybody, even if you can't hear yourselves. We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. For the very end, I would like to read the words to Dorothy Hamlin's favorite song, and that is Garden Song, and it was written by Dave Millett and made popular by John Denver. I'll read the words and then I'll ask Carly to play a very nice arrangement. And incidentally, Kay, this is the piano arrangement that you got for the fellowship a while ago. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All it takes is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, someone bless these seeds I sow. Someone warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. Pulling weeds and picking stones, man is made of dreams and bones. Feel the need to grow my own, 'cause the time is close at hand. Grain for grain, sun and rain, find my way in nature's chain, tune my body and my brain to the music of the land. Plant your rows, straight and long, temper them with prayer and song.
1 second.
Mother Earth will make you strong if you give her love and care. An old crow watching hungrily from his perch in yonder tree. In my garden, I'm as free as that feathered thief up there. So Carly, if you would kindly play us out with the arrangement of Garden Song, we'll end the formal part of the program and everybody's welcome to stay for coffee clatch type discussion. Thank you so very much. It's all yours, Carly.
you.